and welcome to Doctor Who 50 years ago. The show that looks back to the episode that aired in 1967, We've Crossed the Threshold, and looks at what's different between then and now. This week, the Highlanders episode 4, still by ever-invisible Elwyn Jones and glaringly dreary Jerry Davis. Or is he? I am Ben.
I am Luke.
And I'm Nick.
And here we are, and here we go, into the news from 1967. On Sunday, January the 1st, 1967, Medicaid went into effect in the United States, providing free medical care for disabled low-income persons.
This is definitely a big deal at the time. This is sort of like Lyndon Johnson's, what was it, his Big Society or something like that?
Yes.
Something along those lines. So this is definitely showing America's, at least domestically, going in a more progressive direction, even though I guess abroad they're going in a more right-wing direction.
Even back then, they're still way behind us. Like, this is 20 years after the welfare state came into effect in England, and the fact that they have such a restrained version of it shows how much more right-wing the US is.
More economically liberal, yeah. Also on that day, the official newspaper of the Chinese Communist Party directed all party faithfuls, i.e. the people of China, to carry the great proletarian cultural revolution through to the end and attack specific people, including China's president at the time. It's the cultural revolution. It's going to happen throughout 1967, folks.
It's all very much the antithesis of what we in the West value, which is free speech. You shouldn't be imprisoned in the wrong way for show trials, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I guess this can contribute to the fear of communism.
On Monday the 2nd, Operation Bolo in Vietnam shot down 5 to 7 North Vietnamese MiGs, because the war hasn't gone away as we cross the threshold from one year to another. But also at the same time, North Vietnam's Prime Minister signalled that his nation would begin direct peace talks with the US if it maintained an unconditional halt to American bombing, which would be confirmed in approximately 2 weeks from now in official channels.
Looking at these two, it's interesting, like looking at the news that would be released to the public and the news that would not be released to the public. Like, I imagine both of these were very widely circulated, because it means that the North Vietnam are all they're scared. The US will want to tell that to everyone, whereas I don't know, some of the others that we've read about on previous weeks, they've all been about the US being shot, and I doubt anyone wanted that to get out.
Yeah, it's quite an intriguing thing how the press establishes this in the war when they're meant to take official government lines, but in reality they want to actually see how the combat's going, and obviously that includes defeats as well as victories. More defeats in the case of the US, but
I would say it's more self-censorship than anything else, rather than... It's not like in World War II where I think they literally were censored, but it's just... I think something that's very different from now is that there was actually... People did give deference to the politicians. People actually respected them in a way that just nowadays we just don't.
On Tuesday the 3rd of January, Brazil acted its first conservation measure, declaring that animals of any species out of captivity are property of the state.
This is important because this probably is the beginning of the conservation and environmental movement, which is only very... I mean, even now it's not gaining that much traction, but back then it was non-existent. So this was a big deal.
I wonder if it's a product of the younger generation.
I can't remember if at this point Brazil is a military dictatorship or a democracy. I mean, it sort of went between the two. But if it was a dictatorship, I could see it being a sort of way to throw a bone to the more liberal kinds of people. Oh, look, we're doing something nice. Don't hate us for being a dictatorship, that sort of... Yeah,
but ultimately it shows that they have power because they're threatening the dictatorship's rule, if it is a dictatorship. On Saturday, the 7th of January, there was a suicide bomber in Las Vegas. Essentially, a man found 30 sticks of dynamite and blew up a motel in an explosive fit of revenge.
Well, that's what the police thought about it. We've managed to dig up a article from, or I should say, Luke's managed to dig up a news article from the time, and it's interesting that the very first thing that the police thought was the motive was revenge, a husband who was jealous of their wife or something like that. And you contrast that with now, and the very first thing anyone would ever say about it is terrorism, Islamic terrorism specifically. And I would say also that it doesn't look like the people are that scared of it, and nowadays people are a lot more terrified of this sort of idea.
I think that's partly because this incident was probably one of a kind. I mean, that's why we chose it. And whereas the kind of terrorism we see today is much more regular, recent, it could happen to you, that kind of fear.
Yeah.
And finally, the Forsyte saga was broadcast on BBC Two for the first time, gaining 6 million viewers. So positive was the audience reaction that they repeated it a year and a half later, in September 1968, on BBC One, drawing 18 million viewers. It's one of the great dramas of its time.
What's interesting about this is that what they tried to do was convince people to go to BBC Two and buy a new TV set so that they could watch BBC Two, because most TVs at the time couldn't get BBC One and Two. Yeah,
it's a different quality of transmission.
Oh, yes. So they could only watch BBC One and ITV, is that it?
Yes, because BBC Two was on a higher definition system, ready for
right. Okay.
Almost a prerequisite to colour.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like when it was eventually broadcast, the churches essentially shut down so that people could stay at home and watch it, which is insane to think that would ever happen again.
Yeah.
For a TV show.
Mm.
And that was the news. And now we shall get on to the Highlanders, episode 4. This episode is exceedingly average, but it's good. And I will allow Luke to explain.
I watched this on the Saturday, and I messaged both of them saying, "Guys, you gotta see it. You gotta see it. Oh my god, it's good. Things happen, and I knew what was going on, and characters were trying to outsmart each other, and there were the odd moments of tension and nice character bits that were touching. There was a lot of smugness, but it's generally quite good."
It suddenly went back into what classic Doctor Who's meant to be: slightly good drama, entertaining drama to appease the masses on a Saturday tea time. And surprisingly enough, it does it with a historical as well.
Happy. I like this episode, but I don't think it's that good. The first half, up to about 15 minutes in, a lot of stuff's happening. Stuff happens, which is good. But then it does sort of... There's a little bit of tension when they're hiding from the redcoats towards the end, but then after that, there's nothing.
Yeah, they do run out. They do run out of steam. I will agree.
Yeah. So
the thing is that when they do run out of steam, at least you got the characters exchanging witty-ish dialogue, and nobody's dressed in drag.
Right, let's go through the episode and emphasise the good bits. Ben isn't drowned. Surprise. The bagpipers are. Surprise, that is. Because that's how you open an episode. He swims for shore undetected.
I would say about this bit of him swimming to shore. It looks quite good. The stills and the sounds. It looks like that would have looked quite convincing.
Used in the water tank at Ealing, I think.
On audio, listening to 10 seconds of
yeah, it's a bit. But I think the stills themselves, they do look quite good. So I suspect it probably would have looked quite convincing that he was in the sea.
So, yeah, he gets captured by an English sentry, who just so happens to be the Doctor, with terrible accent number 4, Cockney.
Although the disguise, at least on this occasion, the disguise looks okay. He doesn't necessarily sound good, but the disguise is okay.
Yeah.
Compared to some of his other ones, which looked pretty terrible.
The main hero party reunites. Polly asks how the cliffhanger was resolved for the audience, and Ben obliges with the answer. They plan the arming of the rebels. The women complain about not being involved in the dangerous task.
Oh, yeah, I've got something about this. So I found it interesting that, okay, so I thought, this is good, all right, the women want to be involved. Women aren't being shown as, pathetic, like, are they going to cower away from all the action? And the Doctor gives into it, which is good. The Doctor's not being sexist, that's a good thing. But I'm still thinking, this is this weird oscillation that's been going out through this whole serial where the women will act strong, but then suddenly they'll be weak again and then strong again. It's a bit weird. I don't really understand why we've been getting these. They've not really had any character, have they? They just sort of act how the script needs them to act at any one time.
So it seems the Scots are doomed to be slaves for £3,500. Perkins is given responsibility to look after Trask, which is a terrible idea. The Doctor in his German guise comes in and tempts Grey again with Kirsty's ring and the apparent whereabouts of Bonnie Prince Charlie. He's essentially stalling for time with greedy people whilst the others smuggle the arms in for the revolution.
What's good about this little bit is that we've got characters doing things while the business of the plot is carried out, which sort of happened in episode 2 when the Doctor was trying to be funny while threatening people. Here we got Trask threatening the Doctor, and we've got him stalling for time in a sort of interesting way, and sort of we know how all the characters are going to play off of each other, and they do, which made this scene engaging. I cared, and it was very simple as well. I liked it.
This is probably the best we're playing for time, my boy, that we've seen. We didn't like it in the 10th Planet. We didn't like it in the Smugglers. Was there one in Power of the Daleks? I can't remember.
No, that used every second perfectly.
All right, cool. So yeah, it's the second best we've seen in the 4 stories. Yeah, brilliant title. It got second place. Well done, it. So the revolution is armed. The Doctor tells Grey that Jamie is Bonnie Prince Charlie. No, I had to quote this one. The one with the soft hands and face. All right, okay.
So long as he promises not to molest him, then.
Yes.
Well, I mean, obviously there's a reason why he says soft hands. If he was a nobleman, he wouldn't have had, his hands would be soft, because he wouldn't be doing any of the hard labour, unlike the peasants.
So it's none of the tumbler shipping rubbish that I'm thinking of. Okay, cool.
No. And he'd have a soft face because he wouldn't be out in the sun, so he wouldn't be really tanned, like some of the...
Yes.
Although, I mean, Scottish people being tanned is a bit of a stretch, but still.
So, yes, the Doctor leads Grey and Trask to the prisoners, who are, of course, armed and ready, and a fight ensues with swords and everything. There are a lot of Scottish battle cries for about a minute and a half. This has been arranged by Peter Diamond's stunt manager in the credits. I thought it would be Terry Walsh, but no. He's another fighter ranger. I think he becomes part of Havoc eventually in the early 70s. But at the very least, he's a very familiar name with Doctor Who and fight sequences.
From what survives of it, it does look like a well choreographed sword fight. And I was thinking, it appeals to the younger generation, but especially in the 60s, but in a way that the older generation, the parents, would not dislike. The violence depicted is very romanticized. You don't see blood.
It's mostly about Willie and Trask.
Yeah, and that's
Jamie's in it, but we don't really care about him at this point because he hasn't done anything. Ben comes in at the end.
But this is where I'm thinking Jamie is justifying his future companionship is from about here onwards he actually gets a big role in the episode.
So yeah, Trask falls overboard and is never seen again. Woohoo! Willie regains control of the ship easily, so that there goes that subplot. And they're going to go to France. So there. The Doctor, Ben, Jamie, Polly, and the Laird all run away back to shore. Gray is taken prisoner, and Perkins begs to go to France because suddenly he speaks French, which is pretty convenient for his life. And so he manages to get his own back at Gray, release himself from the chains of employment.
Oh yeah, this is where the stupid butler, Perkins, is not actually as stupid as he seems to be, and he gives his solicitor employer his comeuppance. So the working class guy actually wins in some way.
Well, of course, he has to be educated to the extent that he became a clerk for a solicitor. That's a pretty high level, so of course he knows more than one language. So you kind of wonder, why did they write the character like that anyway?
I get comic relief. One can only imagine comic relief.
Oh, God. And as we've seen, it hasn't worked very well.
It's at this point that the episode gets quite twee and smug, and everyone's... It's like in Boomtown, when everyone's a bit too quippy and a bit too jokey with each other, and it comes across as really twee. At least in my opinion, I really dislike Boomtown for that reason.
Yeah, it's the wrong way to
twee.
emphasise the friendship between a time-travelling crew of adventurers. Yeah. So it turns out they need another hostage to get themselves back to the Battle of Culloden. Enter Lieutenant Ffinch, to my surprise. Oh God, they're bringing him in again. Third time, stupidly unlucky for him. And he has a line that synonymises my thoughts. Oh dear, this is really too much. In a strange jump cut, they manage to persuade a colonel, who enters and leaves the story like lightning in one scene. Who is Guy Middleton? Why does he have such a wonderful bout of facial hair? But yeah, they managed to persuade him.
Oh, yeah, this colonel is stupid as anything.
Yes.
He is an utter moron. Oh, yes, Finch, why don't you and some strangers go and catch Bonnie Prince Charlie, that guy we've just fought, the leader of those rebels? Yeah, I won't put all my soldiers onto it just because the stranger said that they're trustworthy. What?
Finch has this field of stupid around him, poisoning everyone. And like in episode 2, when he goes to investigate the animal noises for no reason, it's like he's corrupting those around him. Because most of the other things in the story make sense, but everything Finch does and every scene he's in, this cloud of dumb goes into everyone's minds.
Yeah, it's part of the establishment. It's showing the English, as we've seen, the establishment, the upper class, the hierarchy, and with it comes age. So the colonel as well can be included as being corrupt, evil, stupid, whereas the young doctor and his young crew are shown to be the anti-establishment intellectuals who are the alternative and better solution to everyone's problems, I guess. So, yeah, they managed to get back to the Battle of Culloden College under the pretense of looking for Bonnie Prince Charlie. In a strangely endearing scene, Polly returns all her blackmail material to Finch, and, well, it starts there. And then Gray walks in, and I go, oh God, you again. He tries to assume control, but during the off-screen return to Battle of Culloden, Finch has been told that Gray is an evilman, and Finch arrests him even. But Gray has no evidence about slavery because he's lost all the contracts, and it seems that Finch has done it out of the kindness of his heart to repay Polly somehow, and it's sort of a weird relationship. It's bizarre. It's like Stockholm syndrome for Finch.
Basically, I guess it's like always a historical. The girl and the guy, someone, a man and a woman have to fall in love or something. So literally in the last 2-3 minutes, we get this fake love story between Finch and Polly that never existed anyway.
It makes him look like a hero, and I'm like, oh, that's strangely nice. Jamie becomes a member of the TARDIS crew, and they leave the Highlands of Scotland. Hallelujah. Whoa! God!
We did it!
We've made it out of Scotland, folks. Yippee.
Terrible history we just saw. Okay?
Yeah.
What do we hate more? Do we hate bad history, or do we hate bad science in Doctor Who?
Ooh.
As a student of history, I would probably hate bad history. And Nick, as a student of science, you'd probably hate bad science, right?
Yeah, although, I mean, I do like it when the history is right, but I feel like, yeah, I'd rather bad history than bad science. Like,
but then that
bad science and Kill the Moon absolutely destroys me.
Hiss!
And makes me very
Hiss!
sad. But when some of the more dubious history in Doctor Who, I can sort of skim over it a bit.
I suppose it's all to do with evidence and the intelligence of the viewer and what they know and whether they're a nerd or not.
Yeah, I mean, at least with history, we're usually a little bit more. There's a bit more ambiguity about it than, let's say, science. So.
But then we also love stuff like reversing the polarity of the neutron flow. And that's as ambiguous as they come.
And then that's just knowingly doing it wrong, like wrong science. That's adorable.
My standpoint on this is sort of coming out of that versus the polarity thing. I think that in the 60s and just about in the early 70s, bad science in Doctor Who is one of those things of the time. Oh, it's a bit quirky and stupid, but we love it because it's a bit quirky and ridiculous. And they didn't know better back then. Bad history just seems a bit disrespectful, and you should know better. However, nowadays, it's the complete opposite. You should know the science because we all get taught science. Bad history is one of those more, we care a lot less about the factual historical things now. And so if there was something weird in, say, The Unquiet Dead or one of the other celebrity historicals, we're much more likely to overlook it if the story is much more fast-paced and entertaining, which is what we crave nowadays.
So, yes, the Highlanders, ladies and gentlemen, it has a bizarrely okay, average/good, if we dare to use the word, ending to a story that we feel is far too long and boring for an average viewer to keep up with. I'd argue if it was 2 episodes long, less complicated, and if part 4 was part 2, so a 2-parter, then maybe it would be better.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there.
Oh, good. Well done, me.
Yeah.
Grand.
I mean, I still don't think it'd be that great, but it would be a heck of a lot better.
Well, what you've basically said there, Ben, is there's 25 minutes of good in the first hour 15 of this story, and then episode 4 is okay. That's basically what you're saying, and yeah, I'd argue, yeah.
Far too padded. With nothing. With nothing interesting. Yeah. It needs to be terribly condensed to be.
This serial smells of just they had 4 episodes to fill, didn't really know what to do with it, and they threw a script out, like probably 1 or 2 drafts. Maybe maybe just 1 draft. Oh right, here you go. Let's go with it.
Interesting that you say that, Nick, as we'll see in the debrief. But
good.
for now, why don't we give our scores for now and then on the Highlanders?
I'm giving it 4 out of 10, which probably is quite high. And for somebody 50 years ago, I'm going to say 5 out of 10. I doubt to get any higher. I was going to say I doubt they reached part 4, but as we'll see in the debriefing, perhaps they did.
I'm going to give this story a 4 as well, but I was so shaken by part 4 that I think someone back then would have given it a 6, because it's made me realise there's quite a lot of visual stuff going on. We had the visuals, we'd find it a lot less boring. Yeah, back then they would have preferred it, and they'd have the visuals which would have made it good. Well, not good, but towards good.
Better.
Yeah, I think I'm going to give it 2. Didn't enjoy it at all, really. I don't find 4 redeemed it enough to bring it up. But back then, I do agree with you, Luke. And I think people would be more willing to sit through something that nowadays we consider boring. So I think it'd be 5 back then.
What would we give this serial if part 4 was like parts 1 through 3? Because I think I give it a 2 as well.
Yeah, it's going to slip down to 3 or 2. Yeah.
So shall we continue to the debriefing?
Yes. Let's commit our post-mortem of the Highlanders.
What happened is that Inslide thought, okay, Troughton's here, we're going to end the historicals, the smugglers was the thing, now we're pure science. However, Elwyn Jones, who was essentially everyone's boss, said, hey, I want to do like it's historical, it'll be like, Culloden. And everyone was too scared to say no, or they thought it was a good idea. It's a bit ambiguous whether or not Jerry Davis suggested Culloden, or whether Elwyn Jones wanted to do a historical and said Culloden. But essentially, he couldn't do it. He never did a story structure. He never did any dialogue. And so Jerry Davis had to do everything. We don't know how many drafts he did. But I can say that he thought this was a prime example of how historicals should be done.
What?
He thought this was brilliant.
Jamie trivia, I guess. I wouldn't be surprised if some of the overspend was spent on Fraser Hines playing Jamie. In the fight sequence in part 4, as we described, Peter Diamond accidentally nicked Fraser Hines' eyebrow. So, probably
resulting in the famous Jamie eyebrow.
I guess, I mean, wasn't exactly a major injury, but there we are. The Highlanders ran against Professional Wrestling, Batman, Doddy's Magic Box, and Just Jimmy on ITV, with audience sizes down and a below average audience appreciation response. Innes Lloyd's stance that the historicals weren't popular was vindicated. And finally, overseas sales. The Highlanders did get sold overseas as film copies to Australia, where all the censor clips came from, as well as New Zealand, Hong Kong, Uganda, Zambia and Singapore, before all being junked after 1974, having no commercial value. In the end, we'll probably never know what caused the Highlanders to be junked 50 years ago, apart from the fact it was slightly rubbish. There you are. That is that. Thank you very much for watching, folks. You can find us on Blogspot, which redirects to iTunes, where you can comment and rate us. We're also on Facebook and YouTube, where you can like, comment and subscribe, and other internety things, including Google+, if you dare. We shall be back next week to dive into episode 1 of The Underwater Menace. I've been Ben.
I've been Luke.
And I've been Nick.
Thank you, and goodbye.